All right, guys, welcome back to the Wildcat Defense Fantasy Football League YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chasen Pender. I am the owner, manager, and proprietor of CP Elite, the one-time champion of the Bavix Daddies / Wildcat Defense Fantasy Football League, and also currently the number one team in the whole league, sitting at 6-1. I've been tasked with doing a newsletter for the league, recapping what went on in week 7 and also, giving me the opportunity to talk my talk a little bit. Instead of writing a newsletter, I decided I'd do a podcast. So I'm reviving this YouTube channel, bringing it back, and doing things a little bit differently like I like to do at CP Elite. But before I dive into it, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're on the road to 25 subscribers. Each one of your subscriptions immensely helps. Couldn't tell you how much it helps, how much it means. It takes just 2 seconds to do. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, to get started, I wanted to talk about my matchup with Josh Well. For those of you who don't know, me and Josh Well used to be roommates. And this matchup was definitely one that I had circled on my calendar, circled on my schedule before the season started. This is the Battle of 906 South Worcester. And, it just meant more. It meant more to me. I'm sure Josh Well would tell you the same thing. So, for me at least, going into it, I didn't feel super confident. I have Nico Collins on my team. He's been hurt now for a couple weeks. Don't know when he's coming back, but, since then, it's been kind of a ragtag group I got. And, even going into it, I was 5-1. I did not feel like I was the best team in the league. And Josh Well, has a great lineup. So, looking at our lineups here, obviously Lamar is that guy, starting with my team. Lamar is that guy. I know what I'm getting from every single week. He's the number one quarterback in fantasy, without a doubt. I can't believe all y'all waited and let me get him in round 4. Like, that's crazy. Jameer did his thing this week, finally got a big week out of him. It's been a while. It's the first time this year he scored over 30, so that was great to see. Chase Brown didn't do well. Drake did great, and a lot of forgettable things the rest of my lineup did. My defense scored me a touchdown, which is amazing, and Dicker the kicker did me great. And ultimately I was able to put up 145 points, and that's amazing. So, winnable week, forced me to win, which was great. Moving on to Josh Well's team. I think the biggest thing for him is he's got to be disappointed that he got, 15.5 points out of Alvin Kamara, Stephon Diggs, and Cortland Sutton. Like, that's just not going to do it. That's his RB2 and his 2 wide receivers. Like, that's just not good enough. And ultimately, it cost him the week. I guess looking forward for both our teams, starting with myself, I like my team. Obviously, can't complain. I'm 6-1. Honestly, doesn't get much better than that. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I have kind of like a ragtag group of guys. Not a lot of guys in there that'll jump off the page and scream, superstar. But other than Lamar, but it's just a super consistent team, super high floor, and ultimately that's what's gotten me wins. I've put up, around 125 points every single week, between 120 and 130. And ultimately, that gives you wins. I've been super consistent. So just hoping for more of that. Hopefully, Nico comes back in a couple weeks, and that provides me that high ceiling I've been looking for and puts me in contention to win the league. Moving over to Josh Well's team. Josh Well's got a solid team. I honestly really like it. His quarterback's solid. K1, I think he's underperformed a little bit this year versus expectations, but he's still a top 5 guy. His 2 running backs are great, like 2 top 10 guys rest of the season. His wide receiver room, in my opinion, is not that great. Stephon Diggs is a big name, and he's had some great games thus far this year, but his underlying analytics have not been great. His average depth of target hasn't been great, and especially this week, only scoring 7 points with Nico out, I'd be a little concerned if I were him. Cortland Sutton is Cortland Sutton. Enough said there. Kyle Pitts, I have a lot of hope I think he's good. I think he can really improve Josh Bell going forward. And it seems like that Falcons offense is finally hitting its stride. So hopefully he's able to get a little bit more out of him. And then obviously Amari at the flex is great now, considering that he's with the Bills. And moving down to his bench, I mean, he's got DJ Moore here. He was on bye. I kind of forgot about him, if I'm being honest. DJ Moore he could be a league winner. I got to be honest. He can be a league winner. Caleb in that offense is trying to look legit. So he could definitely, pop off the rest of the year and help Josh Bell get some wins. And the rest of his bench, I mean, is there really anything else to say? Like, it's not that great. Moving on to the next matchup, I got Yuri, owner of 24 Garrett Magic, against Noah, owner of DZ Landeezys, a classic team name. So starting with Yuri's team, Yuri ended up losing, scoring 113 points this week. I think the biggest disappointment for him this week is that Jaden Daniels got hurt. Obviously, you're going to expect more than 5 points out of Jaden Daniels, and he definitely would have gotten more than that if he didn't get injured. But, Noah put up a lot of points this week, so he would have lost regardless if Jaden Daniels scored the whole game. Moving down his lineup, Kyron, dog, 19.6 points. I was at the game. He was amazing. Javonte Williams, you got to hope that he gets that type of usage the rest of the year. Great game, obviously, best game of the year. Hopefully there's a lot more of that to come for him. Garrett, DK, great options. Garrett's been a little disappointing this year. DK was good this week. Brock Bowers, great call by Yuri. Yuri always has like one of these picks every single year where, he just calls it. And this year it's Brock and it's Jaden Daniels. So got to give him credit there. Great calls to get him in. I think he got him in the 9th and 10th round, which is just like crazy for what he's gotten back for them. So shout out to him for that. Flexes are nothing to talk about. Going down to his bench, there's not really much to talk about on his bench. Obviously, ETN's out. That would have helped him this week. But, like I said, he lost by 30 points. So I don't really know how much help ETN and Jaden would have given him. Moving on to Noah's team. Jalen Hurts, great week. Jalen Hurts is a dog, former CP Elite alumni. Love that man. He's fucking great. But he had a solid week, 23 points. Can't really ask for more out of your quarterback. Noah's running back room, just on a whole, Noah's had a really disappointing year. I think he started 0-4, but, he's starting to claw back. 3 straight wins. He's at 3-4. I mean, I think he can't ask for much more, given the way he started and honestly the makeup of his team. But getting back to his roster, I mean, Aaron Jones, Tank Bigsby, what a week from those guys. 43 points combined from those two is amazing. I've never been an Aaron Jones guy, but he's been great in Minnesota, and Noah's definitely gotten his money's worth from where he drafted him. But Tank Bigsby is a league winner. He's amazing. He's amazing. I watched that whole game. He was amazing. He got every single touch. That's going to be a big thing for him going forward. Moving over to his receiver room, I mean, not a fan of it at all, to be honest. Not a fan of it at all. I know that Michael Pittman and Keenan Allen are DZ Landeezys to the core, but this doesn't look like the year for either of them to do much. Pittman's in an offense with a quarterback that can't throw the ball, and Keenan Allen just looks old and slow, unfortunately. So that sucks because those were his 2 highest drafted receivers, and it doesn't look like they're working out. But moving on to his other options, I mean, Mooney's a great option, especially he picked him up off the waiver wire. Little bit annoying for me because he always takes touches from Drake, but I can't complain much because Drake's been balling. Trey McBride, great pickup. I forget what you traded him for. I think it was like Mandrews and something else. I love Trey McBride. That's also a CPE alum. Like, shout out. But he's great. And then Chubba Bubba Hubbard. That man's a dog. I love Chubba Hubbard. He's also a CPE alum. So that's great. I mean, moving down to your bench, DeAndre Swift was on bye. Honestly, forgot about that. But DeAndre Swift is a dog. He's looked great. Rashad White, extremely disappointing this year, but, he had a bounce-back week. 29 points is amazing. And, the scary thing about what you did this week is you could have put up a lot more. You put him in the lineup instead of Pittman, you score 165 points. Like, that's wild. But anyways, overall, I like Noah's team. I like Yuri's team. Noah just got the best of him this week. So moving on to the next matchup, I got Mr. Bhavik Desai against Mr. Attiker. And oh boy, this was a stinky ass matchup. Stinky ass matchup. Like, these boys suck this week. Bhavik won 103.6 to 60.3. Keep in mind, this is a 2 flex league, so we got 10 guys in our lineup. I don't even know how you score 60 points like in that format. But moving on. Starting with the losing team, starting with Attiker. Attiker's had a rough year, especially by his standards. He's 4-3, hasn't really been one of the best scorers in the league, like one of the highest scorers. Dealt with a lot of injuries. But the fact that he's 4-3 is positive and gives him a little bit of hope. He's got Puka coming back. He's got Puka coming back in a couple weeks, which should help him. And and Tua's coming back to play. Tua's coming back, which will help Waddle immensely. But obviously losing Godwin's a huge loss. So Waddle and Puka does cover what he's been getting from Godwin, in my opinion. But losing Godwin's like a big deal, and honestly, it's going to hurt him going forward. But going through what he did in Week 7, and I guess a little bit of a future preview for him as well. CJ, not a good week at all. 5 points. The issue with non-scrambling quarterbacks in fantasy is that you gotta have like a 250-yard week with like 3 touchdowns in order to put up like a respectable amount, on a week-to-week basis, and that's just tough. Like, the floor does fall out on guys that don't scramble, and Attiker got the bad end of that this week. His running back room, gosh, this week it's bad. Jaleel McLaughlin, Trey Sermon, like, that's stinky. Like, 8 points out of those guys, 9 points, like, that's stinky. Wide receiver room, Chris Godwin, as I mentioned, huge loss. Looked like an awful injury. That stinks. Wandale, the only guy you can play in that passing attack is Malik, and we'll get on to him a little later. Travis, Travis been disappointing this year, man, and another disappointing week. 5.7 in total. With all the injuries they've had in the passing attack, like, you would think that he would get a lot of looks, and he just hasn't. He looks a little old, looks a little slow, so that's obviously not great to hear. Jalen Waddle, stinky week, 2 points, but he's got Tua coming back, which will help. And then Juju got injured, which sucks. He probably would have had a pretty good week. I watched a good amount of that game, and those boys couldn't pass the ball without Juju out there, which is a crazy thing to say, especially when you got Pat Mahomes out there. But, man, they look bad. Moving on to his bench, I think for Attiker, I'm going to spend a little more time on it than others just because he's got a lot of guys down here. JT being hurt. Seems like he's been hurt pretty much every week this year. I'm sure Attiker can correct me on that in the chat later, but it seems like he's been injured a lot, which obviously isn't great. When he comes back, he's going to help. JT's one of the better backs in the league, so he should, give him a little bit of a boost. He's got Jonathan Brooks, who seems pretty close to coming back. That whole situation's been weird. Even going back to like spring training, they said that spring mini camp, they said that he'd be ready for the fall camp, but he wasn't. And then they keep on saying that he's going to be ready and pushing it back. So, he's dealing with a tough injury. We'll see if they even bring him back this year. My guess is that they probably will, but Chuba Hubbard's been good, and the Panthers are no good anyway, so they might as well just sit him out for the whole year. Devin Singletary, Yeah, that boy's been replaced by Tyrone Tracy, which is unfortunate for Attica. But got a couple good weeks out of him. And then the big one's Puka on the bench. Puka Nacua season. Shout out big time CPE alum. He'll be back in a couple weeks and he should help. The news that Cooper Kupp may get traded, RIP to the Rams, is really going to help Puka because who else does Stafford got the ball to throw to? It's just Puka and a bunch of guys. Yuri will come in and say, what about Jordan Whittington? Jordan Whittington's not very good. Anyways, moving on to Bavic's team. Bavic's got, in my opinion, top to bottom, probably the most talented team in the league, especially once he gets healthy. I mean, he's just got a bunch of names here. They haven't been super consistent, combination of they just haven't been consistent, and also he's just had a lot of injuries. And yeah, he's kind of had that same pattern this week. So yeah, Kirk Cousins, similar to CJ, really tough to consistently get, a good score with a guy that doesn't scramble. Kirk Cousins doesn't move a lick. I actually think he's been pretty good this year. As a Drake London stan, supporter, holder, he's been great. He's been getting the ball to Drake, which I love. But fantasy-wise, yeah, Bobby, you got to do better. And I know it's just 1 week because Dak's hurt, but come on now, bro. Like, you got lucky with the win, but it is what it is. His running back room as a whole is really good, in my opinion. James Conner, Brian Robinson, CMC when they come back, like that's a solid three-headed monster. James Conner has been great this year, super solid. A guy that I was definitely targeting going into the draft. Same with Brian Robinson, like he's been great. He's the RB1 over there in Washington. Eckler doesn't really touch him. So he's got to be happy with that. And, with CMC coming back, hopefully it's soon. Last I heard it was like week 10. Hopefully it's sooner than that for him. But, that'll really help. That'll really help him. CMC's the best guy in the league. And once he comes back, like Bobby's team going to be unstoppable. But moving on to the receivers, as I mentioned earlier, Bobby's been dealing with a lot of injuries. And Debo got ruled out right before game time. And Bobby didn't get a chance to change out his lineup. So he got a 0 from Debo this week, which is tough, obviously. Like, don't want to do that. I think he got 2.7 points out of Deontay, and that's obviously super tough as well. Yeah, I guess for those two guys as a whole, like Debo's going to do his thing as long as he's healthy. This year he hasn't been particularly healthy, which is tough for Bavik, but yeah, I mean, he'll do his thing if he's healthy. Deontay, Bavik put him on his bench this week. He's going to suck. I'm sorry. Bryce Young, not that guy. Andy Dalton is that guy in terms of fantasy, but not Bryce Young. Moving on his tight end room, I like Jake Ferguson. He's solid. Obviously was on bye this week. Hunter Henry can't ask for much more. 17 points from a streamer tight end. Like, that's a win. Flex position, I'm going to talk about T. Higgins and Kupp here and Olave. So T. Higgins did play this week. 18 points. That's solid. Yeah, I mean, T. Higgins seems like the number one guy in that offense, which is crazy to say, but he's the one getting the most targets. He's the one getting the most first read percentage targets. Yeah, he seems like that guy. And, since he's been back, he's been putting up points, which is great. Cooper Kupp was amazing in the first 2 games of the year, but he hasn't been back sick since. He's been injured, which obviously hurts Bavik. He should be back this week, which will help Bavik and hurt me because I'm playing him, but we'll talk about that later. And then Chris Olave, shout out to him, CPE alum. He's been disappointing. He's been very disappointing, which sucks because I almost took him in the 3rd round, but I took Nico instead, which honestly has been my best pick this year, which is great to say. Yeah, I think that covers this matchup. Bavik, I guess future outlook on both teams. Bavik, definitely positive. He's got, guys coming back from injury. He's stayed afloat while they've been out at 3-4. He's got me this week, so he'll be 3-5. But, overall, pretty good outlook for him. Attica's team, I would say not as positive as an outlook. Attica's such a good fantasy manager, though, that he's going to be able to find guys to put up points on a week-to-week basis. But I would say as of right now, Not the most positive outlook, but moving on to the next matchup, we got Kirk-and-Size Penix, managed by Larry Leger, scoring 136 points against Return of the Chase, managed by Anurag Gautam, who scored 96 points. So starting with the losing team, as we do here, AJ's team is all right. AJ's team is all right as a whole. This week specifically, Josh Allen put up a great week. I don't think he's been as productive as he has previously. Let me look at his stats. But yeah, I don't think he's been as consistent as he has previously. Yeah, he's had a couple spike weeks, had a couple really bad weeks. But it's Josh Allen. He's going to score you points in fantasy, which is great. And this week he did. Unfortunately, the rest of his team didn't, but we'll get to that. His running back room: Ramondre, Zach Moss, Raheem Mostert. These are a bunch of guys that would have been good like 2 years ago, but this is 2024 and none of these guys are very good. Ramondre, Zach Moss had 4.5, 7 points. Ramondre, never been a fan. That offense sucks, and he's not even getting the RB1 usage on a week-to-week basis. Zach Moss, old. Great offense, but that's Chase Brown season. That's CPE season, not Zach Moss season. Raheem Mostert, this isn't 2023. This is 2024. That boy is not good. And that offense has not been good without Tua. So we'll see if that comes back. But, as of right now, not a lot of high hopes for Raheem Mostert. Moving on to his receiver room. AG, low-key sleeper, might have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the league. The two-headed monster of Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb is, maybe the best in the league. Obviously, biased opinion is that when healthy, Nico Collins and Drake London is better for this season. But, right behind that is CD and Jamar Chase. Great 1-2 punch. As mentioned, Jamar Chase is, in my opinion, the wide receiver 2 in Cincy, which is weird to say. He just hasn't done as well as he has in previous years. But CD, similar note, just hasn't been as dominant as he was in prior years, or really last year specifically. He's been all right. He's been solid, but AG hasn't seen that top end, ceiling type of game yet. CD definitely has it in him. It just hasn't happened yet. So he'll be fine there. His other receivers: D-Hop, Devontae Adams, Michael Wilson. Shout out Shamanon. Solid. D-Hop just got traded to the Chiefs, so AG's got to hope that that's going to lead to more fantasy production for him. I don't know. We'll see. I obviously have Xavier Worthy on my team, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But D-Hop's definitely talented enough. I haven't watched much Titan football, so I can't really speak to how he's looked this year. But historically, D-Hop is a great player, so maybe he can turn back the clock and bring back his old production. Devontae. Yeah, Devontae's just a name in my opinion. I said this when he was drafted. You can ask Josh Well. AG drafted him too high. Devontae is, in my opinion, not the guy he used to be. I had Devontae last year. I had Devontae the year before, and he's just not that guy he was in Green Bay, at least from a fantasy perspective. He is back with AR, with Mr. Rogers, which is great. It may help his fantasy production, but Garrett Wilson is the number one guy there, and frankly, I don't think the Jets are very good, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers is very good. But that's a conversation for another day. Pat Freiermuth at tight end is Pat Freiermuth at tight end. What more can I say? Tight end 10. Didn't realize he had Najee until just right now. Yeah, Najee's your best running back rest of season, my opinion. But at the end of the day, Najee is maybe a high-end RB2, maybe. But yeah, your RB room, in my opinion, is a little bit of a liability. I guess looking forward on the season recap, looking forward. 3-4, lost this last week. Larry's a really good team, which I'll get on to, so I don't think he can be that disappointed in losing this week. But obviously every week matters. You're 10th in the league, 3-4. I think lowest scoring total of all the teams at 3-4, which is already 10th. But you have the pieces to make a run. I'm not a believer in running backs, so I don't know why I was criticizing yours. You got the receivers to do it for sure. You just haven't seen the production yet. So hopefully that comes around. Hopefully you do better. And hopefully you're able to make a run to the playoffs. Moving on to Larry's team, won this last week, 136.6 points scored. Larry's up there in that top tier of the league this season. I said Bobak was in that tier as well. Larry's right there. I think I'm right there. Just stacked top to bottom. Like, Larry had a stinky first season in the league, but, the last 2 years he's done a great job. He's had a great draft, and, he's done a good job managing it last 2 years. Looking at his lineup, Joe Burrow, go see what I said about C.J. Stroud and Kirk Cousins. Kind of the similar mold. I like Joe Burrow more than those guys probably, just because I think the offense is a little better. But yeah, similar mold. His running back room, dogs, both of them dogs. I feel like every single team I say, like, oh, this team got one of the better running backs, one of the better wide receiver rooms. So I'm just not going to say that anymore. But Larry's got a couple dogs. Saquon, Ken Walker III, doesn't get much better than that. Those are 2 top 10 guys rest of the season, which is great to go to as your 1-2 punch at your running back positions. Looking at his bench, he's got the handcuff for Ken Walker, which is dope. Zach Charbonnet. Doesn't really have anyone else. Antonio Gibson is Antonio Gibson, but that's cool. All right, moving on to Larry's wide receiver room. Larry's wide receiver room is stacked. A.J. Brown, Malik Nabers, George Pickens, Terry McLaurin. That's a solid 4 options right there. Malik and A.J. Brown obviously going to lead the room, but, solid squad. Solid wide receiver room, solid running backs, decent quarterback. I like Larry's team a lot. He's in that top tier of teams, as I said. Going forward, he should definitely make the playoffs. And he's got T.J. Hawkinson coming back, which will help. Kate Otten had a great week this week for him as well. All right, moving on to back-to-back babes, managed by Kristen Brogno, Kristen Breezy, shout out, against Mach 18, managed by Mr. Blake Judge. Back-to-back babes won, 128.8 to 109.3, scored by Blake Judge, Mach 18. Starting with the losing team, Blake Judge. Yeah, this is not a Blake Judge year. 2-5, that's embarrassing. I've had a couple years like that, so I can't really talk that much, but come on now, Blake. I know you're better than that. You're better than that. This is not what you do, and that's okay. But looking at his team, honestly, his team has a lot better names than the production to back him up. Anthony Richardson, we don't have to talk about him. He's just not good in fantasy or in real life football. Derrick Henry, great. I will admit I was not a believer in Derrick Henry coming into this year, but he was obviously great this year, or he's been great this year. So shout out to him. J.K. Dobbins, again, was not a believer, but he's been pretty solid this year. And the Chargers have been pretty good, which I was a believer in. I said the Chargers would win 10 games. I don't know if they'll get there, but they look like a pretty good football team. In his wide receiver room, it's led by JJ. JJ is a dog. Love JJ, also a CPE alum. He's been pretty good this year. I would have drafted him at 5. I would have drafted him at 8 where I drafted. If he was there, I was going to take him. And I know Josh Well was going to do the same. So I wasn't too concerned about Sam Darnold. I'm sure Blake wasn't either by the fact that he took him. But JJ's done JJ things. Hasn't had the top end, ceiling that he had with Kirk. But he's had a solid year thus far. Wide receiver 4. And more than anything, knock on wood, he's been healthy. And, a lot of the top-end wide receivers have just not been healthy. So Blake's got to be happy with him, and he got 20 points from him this week, which is pretty good. The rest of his receivers, it gets pretty bad pretty quick for Blake. Blake hit my line. Actually, I don't have receivers, so don't hit my line. Josh Downs, Brandon Ayuk, Calvin Ridley, Dontavian Wicks, Jalen Polk, bum means, ugh. That's gross. That's gross. I actually like Brandon Ayuk, but he just got injured, which is unfortunate for Blake. But the rest of those guys, that's yuck, man. Like, none of those guys are good. None of those guys can help you in fantasy for the rest of this year. My question is, are we going to see Jalen Polk in his flex this week coming off of 0 points? Is that something that Blake Judge is going to do? I sure hope not. But I'm sure the person you're playing against does hope that. So we will see. I guess last guy to mention is Devon Achane. Disappointing week, 10.5 points, but overall has been pretty good. What is he? Actually, running back 23 hasn't been pretty good. He was really good the first couple weeks and has fallen off precipitously since. Since Tua has gotten hurt. Tua's coming back this week, so hopefully he regains that form from early this week. But yeah, that I guess covers his team. Looking forward, I mean, Blake is 2-5. Realistically, he's got to go. I think we got 14 games in the year, so he's got to go 6-1 to make the playoffs. Like, realistically, to guarantee it, which is possible. It's definitely possible, but I mean, it's going to be tough for him to do. We'll see. We'll see if he can do it. Moving to Chris. Chris is Mr. Solid. Always going to get 8-9 wins. Last year won the league, obviously. Shout out. But Chris is a respectable fantasy player. Been good previously. This is another solid team. Just another solid team that's going to get him 8-9 wins and give him a chance to win it all. Looking through his lineup, he's got Brock Purdy as his quarterback. Pretty good week from him, 17 points. I think in general, he's quarterback 8 right now. Like, he'll probably end up somewhere around there this year. Like, not a top end guy at quarterback, but serviceable starter, and he's pretty reliable. He can run a little bit, which is good. Not a lot, but he'll give you a little bit on the ground. Moving to his running backs, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery. I wanted DeMont this year. I was literally about to draft him the very next pick when Chris took him, which stung a little bit. Not a big DeMont stan, mostly because I have Jahmyr Gibbs and he takes a lot of touches. But DeMont's a good player. Fantasy-wise, he should be solid. Should give you like 12, 15 points a week. Seems like he sees the touchdown. Seems like he sees the end zone like every single week, which is, great. Joe Mixon, I've never really been a fan of him. That's a JFT guy, not a CPE guy. But he's been great this year. He's been really, really good this year. I'm looking at his stats now. He's played in 4 games, and he scored at least 26.4 points in 3 of those 4 games. Like, that's incredible. It looks like he's a top-end RB1 if he stays healthy, which is great. Chris's wide receivers. And Chris got Breece Hall. Yeah, Breece Hall should get better. Breece Hall was drafted a little too early, I think, for what he is. He's probably in my opinion, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is better rest of season, but that's just my opinion. He'll be all right. Jets won't be, but he should be all right fantasy-wise and be like a mid-level RB1, somewhere around RB6, RB7 rest of the season, which is good. He's going to help you. I mean, the three-headed monster of Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, and Breece Hall should get you a lot of points on a week-to-week basis. And this week they did. 26 from Breece is great. Moving on to his receivers, Tyler Lockett, that's an Breezy babe through and through. I feel like you have him every single year. Not one of my guys. Not one of my guys I look at. Like, I'm looking at his stats. He's been solid. He should be solid rest of season. Kind of like Christian Kirk. I don't know. I feel like they're similar players. Tyler Lockett's just like a better, but like kind of similar, like unsexy, but will get you points on a year-to-year basis. Not this year for Christian Kirk, but in general, I would say those are kind of similar players. Jameson Williams has been good, but it looked like he might be suspended for PEDs, and I also saw on Twitter that he might get hit with a gun charge too, so not sure if they're related, but yeah, he'll be all right. You just want anyone in that offense except for Sam Laporta. Tier for me. But yeah, Mike Evans is your other receiver. He's been great this year, as he always is, but he got hurt, and it looks like it was pretty badly, which, obviously is tough to see. But yeah, moving on to your bench for this week at least. Ladd McConkey, hopefully should get a little better for you week to week. I got the other two receivers in that lineup. Shout out Josh Palmer and shout out Quentin Johnson. So I'm hoping that he kind of doesn't take on more of the volume, but we'll see. Braylon Allen is the handcuff to Brees, so that's cool. Romeo Doubs seems like the wide receiver one when Jaden Reed's hurt, which I think he was hurt this last week. Zach Ertz is Zach Ertz. That's cool. Pretty solid tight end for fantasy. Bucky Irvin's been great. Like, Bucky Irvin's been really good. You definitely hit on that one, Chris, which is great. I think looking forward for Chris. Chris is 4-3. I think he's got a solid team. I think he's going to have a Chris and Bruno year and probably get about 8 wins and be right there at the end of the year. So shout out to Chris. Moving on to the last matchup of this week, the very last one. I feel like I've been talking forever. We have Tank Doing Me Dirty, managed by Matt Edelman, against Stoopman, managed by Jason Hodge. So starting with the losing team, Jason finally got off the stoop, finally got off the snide, as they say, and won a game. He won a game. Jason's team's some trash. I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Your team's not very good, Jason. I think you're very deservingly 1-6 this year and 12th in the league. I do not see a lot of bright spots for this team. But I'm going to try to highlight them. So Baker, here's a bright spot. Baker's QB2. Shout out to Baker Mayfield. He's been QB2, 27 points this week, and he's the reason you won this week, which is great. And he's been pretty consistent, I feel like. Let's see. Yeah, he's been great. Since week 4, he's been very, very consistent. So, yeah, I mean, he'll be good rest of the year, it looks like. But who knows with his top 2 receivers out. Your running back room. I've hit you up about Tony Pollard, not going to lie. He's just like a low-end RB2. Nothing too exciting, in my opinion. But, I mean, hey, he'll get you, probably 12 points a week or something. Josh Jacobs had a really good week this week, 20 points. That's good. He just hasn't been consistent at all. This is his first week scoring 20. He's been right around 11, 12 points, it looks like, most of the year. So that's a disappointment for you and probably a big reason that you haven't won a lot of games. Your wide receivers, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers. I love Zay Flowers. He got hurt this week. I watched that game. I watch all of the Ravens snaps because I have Lamar. Zay Flowers is really good. I think a lot of the fantasy community, the fantasy gurus, quote unquote, are hating on Zay Flowers and think he's going to come back to earth. He came back to earth this week just because he got hurt, but I think rest of the season he'll be pretty good. Devontae Smith, I like Devontae Smith enough. He's all right. He's been pretty solid every week he plays. He was injured a couple weeks. This last week he was not good. Only got you 0.4 points, but when he plays, he's pretty good. David Njoku had an amazing week. I heard rumors that he might get traded, and if not, he has famous Jameis coming in, so he'll be probably pretty solid for you. In your flex, you got Tyreek, who's stunk, and probably the biggest reason that you only have 1 win thus far. You got Tua coming back this week, though. So, I mean, Tua coming back means that Tyreek's going to score a lot more points, or at least you would hope. And then Jordan Mason's only got 2 more weeks of being relevant until CMC comes back, but he, unfortunately for Jason, the second Matt traded him to him, he's been pretty stinky, which sucks for him. Moving on to the bench, he's got Pat Mahomes. I was wondering why Jason drafted 4 quarterbacks in the draft. That strategy did not seem to work out for him, unfortunately. Pat Mahomes has stunk specifically. He's just straight up not been good. Tajay Spears has also been not very good. Looks like he didn't play last week. He got 0 points. Alan Lazard. Yeah. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not great. Not great. I remember you traded him to Matt. Yeah, I mean, you did Matt. Let me look at this trade again. Traded Jordan Mason. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm looking at this trade you had with Matt, and at the time, I thought you fleeced the hell out of Matt, but, looking back at it, I don't know how much of a fleece it was. JSN has been all right. He's been solid, but honestly, he hasn't hit that top end ceiling that I think you were hoping for. And as mentioned with Jordan Mason, he's been kind of stinky since you traded for him. Matt's gotten good production out of Kareem Hunt, which we'll get to in a second, and Pacheco's coming back soon, so he's going to hope that he's an RB1 rest of the season. So maybe a hot take, but did Jason get fleeced on that trade? Who knows? Rest of the season outlook for Jason. If Tyreek gets better, which you would hope with Tua coming back, he's got a chance to win a couple games. At this point, he'd have to go undefeated basically to make the playoffs. He can maybe afford one loss, but two, and he's definitely eliminated. That's tough. I mean, Jason's season is kind of over. I think at this point, he's just hoping not to have the worst record in the league history, which is sad to say for someone who's won the league a couple times. And I haven't touched on this, but what the hell happened to the S tier? What happened to the S tier guys? Attiker, Blake, Jason, I'm talking to y'all three. Attiker, you got 4 wins, which is great, but as mentioned, I don't think your team's very good. These other two guys got 3 wins combined. So what happened? Is the S tier replaced by Larry and Chasen? Is Larry Chasen Bobbitt the S tier now? Questions to be asked. Anyways, moving on to Matt. Matt lost this week, 3-4, scored 112 points. This is a tough loss for him, especially since it happened all on Monday night, which sucks. Those are the worst losses. Matt's team is all right. Matt's team was like super stacked, like ridiculously stacked. And then he kind of switched it up, trying to do a little too much, and it's gone a little downhill since then. Going through his lineup, Jordan Love's all right. I don't think he'll be as good as he was last year. He missed a couple games. Actually, yeah, he'll be all right. He'll be like a mid-tier QB1, somewhere between like QB5 and QB8 or something. He's all right. He's solid. 16 points this week. Got out-dueled by Baker, which is going to hurt, and that's the reason he lost this week. James Cook, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt had a great week. 22 points. Who would have thought Kareem Hunt would have came in and done this? He was on the waiver wire, and we all passed on him, except for Matt. So shout out to Matt for doing that. James Cook started off really hot, and he's kind of tail off recently. The first 3 weeks he was amazing, and then the last 3 weeks he's played, he's been kind of stinky. But that's all right. Happens. Amon-Ra has not been as good as he has in previous years. I know he's still wide receiver 9, but it just hasn't felt like he's been very good. They're not feeding him the ball as much as they did in prior years. They're just not doing it, which is weird and which sucks for him, but not as good for him. He's got Jayden Reed, which for me stings particularly because I chose Christian Watson in front of him, and boy, how wrong was I. That was honestly my worst pick this year. If I had Jayden Reed, my team would be very, very complete. But enough talking about me. Jayden Reed's great. Wide receiver 1 and one of the best offenses in the league. Matt will do great with him. George Kittle is a really solid tight end 1, like really solid. Honestly, for this year, he might be the rest of the season tight end 1, which is kind of crazy to say, but he's been great. Marvin Harrison Jr. hasn't lived up to the hype, which is unfortunate, but I'm still a believer in the talent. I think he'll be good. You can hit my line, Matt, if you need someone to trade. Only scored 5 points this week and folded the lead for Matt on Monday night, which sucks. Moving on to Tank Dell. Tank Dell, 0 points. If there's anyone to blame for Matt's loss, it's Tank Dell. Tank Dell is not it. Not it this year, unfortunately. I liked him. I'll be honest, I tried to text Matt about trading for him last week, and boy, am I happy I didn't, because if I had 0 points from him, I still would have won, but it would have been more stressful than it was. He just hasn't been good. Nico's out, and he just didn't get fed the ball. Not one target this week. I don't know how that's possible. Not one target from Tank Dell. That's crazy. Matt's bench. I'm a Rico Dowdle stan. I think he's good. Dalton Kincaid is solid. Yeah, he's a tight end 1. He's tight end 12 thus far. He's solid. Jalen Warden, Jaron Judy, not good. Pacheco's coming back. CP Elite alum. I love that guy. Hopefully he'll do better for him. Rest of season for Matt. He's 3-4. Yeah, I mean, if he gets Pacheco healthy and he turns into the guy he was last year, Matt's got a chance to make the playoffs. And I think that'd be the first time he's ever made the playoffs, which is crazy. But I think that covers my Week 7 matchup. That covers everything I wanted to talk about. I know I've been talking for a while, and some of you are probably super bored. But before I go, wanted to give a quick preview of Week 8 and go through the matchups that we have. So in our Thursday night football matchup, we got Waddle and Ahmad Johnson, managed by Attica Rana, against back-to-back Babes. Yeah, I think back-to-back Babes is gonna be favored in this. Yeah, I just think they're the better team, if I'm being honest. I just think they're the better team. No disrespect to Attica. I think he has the better team this week. So that's my Thursday night matchup. Fun one to start it off between two plucky teams, and honestly, a matchup that they would have thought would have been a primetime matchup, going into the season. In our 10 a.m. slot on Sunday, we got Mach 18 against Stoopman. This matchup was actually flexed out of the Sunday night matchup. Two of the bigger hitters in the league. Coming in the year, the league would have thought that both these guys would have been vying for a playoff position at this point, and had them scheduled on Sunday night, but they've just been stinky. So they got flexed to the 10 a.m. spot. Looking at it now, they're both projected to score a lot. Yeah, they're both projected to score a lot. I think Blake's probably got the advantage here, but you never know, especially with Tyreek coming back. And the other 10 a.m. slot on Fox, we got Tank doing me dirty against Return of the Chase. Yeah, these have been not two of the bigger hitters in the league historically, and yeah, it just feels like a 10 a.m. matchup. Yeah, I think AG's got a good chance to win this. His receivers should carry him to points, but we'll see. In the 125, America's Game of the Week on Fox, we got DZ Land against Joshua's football team. Yeah, this should be a pretty good matchup. Both guys are above 500, and both guys have been pretty solid thus far. I lied. DZ Land 3-4, but both teams are solid. Yeah, I think Noah's missed on a lot of his draft picks, but Noah's a solid player, and he's at 3-4, so he should get points. I think I got JFT in that matchup, but we'll see. In the Sunday night football game, flexed into it from the 10 a.m. time slot, we got CP Elite playing against I Love Big TDs. Yeah, this is going to be a heavy hitter matchup between Bavik and I. Yeah, I don't think anyone in the league would have suspected me to be 6-1 thus far into the league, except for myself. Joshua very much disrespectfully put me at 5 wins projected for the whole season. 5 wins. I'm at 6 already. So I'm hoping to make it 7 this week. Bavik's got a solid team. Bavik's always got kind of this middle of the road team. This year I think it's a little better than middle of the road. Yeah, his team's scary. His team's really scary, and I honestly think he's got an advantage on me this week, but who knows? I've been able to put up points pretty consistently and been able to, make you earn a victory. Like, my only goal is to get to like 120, 130 and make Bavik earn a victory. So we'll see. I'm not going to make a prediction on that one, but should be a fun matchup. And then on the Monday night football game, rounding out the week, we got 24 Garrett Magic versus Kirkham-sized Penix. Yeah, Larry's got a good team. I got Larry in this matchup, but two good teams. Like, Yuri's got a solid team, as mentioned. Did his thing with the rookies and hit on a couple guys. It looks like he's got Drake May in there right now. And yeah, Larry's at 5-2. So big matchup for both of them. A win for Larry puts him a game closer to the playoffs. A win for Yuri puts him a win closer to the playoffs. But like I said, I got Larry in that matchup. So yeah, I think that's all I got. Thank you guys for listening. If you made it through the whole thing, I know it's been a while. But love you guys. Good luck in week 8.